Welcome to Thueringer, or Farming Simulator 15. We now continue reading Zane Gray's book, The Desert of Wheat, from chapter 30. She was not aware of when she moved, how she ever got to Dorn's bedside, but seemingly detached from her real self, serene, with emotions locked, she was there looking down upon him. "Lenore," he said, with far-off voice that just reached her. Gladness shone from his shadowy eyes. "Welcome home, my soldier boy," she replied. Then she bent to kiss his cheek and to lay hers beside it. I never hoped to see you again," he went on. "Oh, but I knew," murmured Lenore, lifting her head. His right hand, brown, barren, rough, lay outside the coverlet upon his breast. It was weakly reaching for her. Lenore took it in both hers while she gazed steadily down into his eyes. She seemed to see then how he was comparing the image he had limned upon his memory with her face. "Changed, you're older, more beautiful, yet the same," he said. "It seems long ago." "Yes, long ago. Indeed I am older. But all's well that ends well. You are back." "Lenore, haven't you been told I can't live?" "Yes, but it's untrue," she replied, and felt that she might have been life itself speaking. "Dear, something's gone from me. Something vital's gone with the shell that took my arm." "No," she smiled down upon him. All the conviction of her soul and faith she projected into that single word and serene smile. All that was love and woman in her opposing death. A subtle, indefinable change came over Dorn. "Lenore, I paid for my father," he whispered. "I killed Hans. I spilled the blood in me. I hate it, but all was wrong. "Yes, but you could not help that," she said piercingly. "Blame can never rest upon you. You were only an American soldier. Oh, I know, you were magnificent. But your duty that way is done. A higher duty awaits you." His eyes questioned sadly and wonderingly. "You must be the great sower of wheat." "Sower of wheat?" he whispered, and a light quickened in that questioning gaze. There will be starving millions after this war. Wheat is the staff of life. You must get well. Listen." She hesitated and sank to her knees beside the bed. "Kurt, the day you're able to sit up, I'll marry you. Then I'll take you home, to your wheat hills." For a second, Lenore saw him transformed with her spirit, her faith, her love, and it was that for which she had prayed. She had carried him beyond the hopelessness, beyond incredulity. Some guidance had divinely prompted her, and when his mute rapture suddenly vanished, when he lost consciousness and a pale gloom and shade fell upon his face, she had no fear. In her own room she unleashed the strange bonds on her feelings, and suffered their recurrent surge and strife, until relief and calmness returned to her. Then came a flashing uplift of soul, a great and beautiful exaltation. Lenore felt that she had been gifted with incalculable power. She had pierced Dorn's fatalistic consciousness with the truth and glory of possible life, as opposed to the dark and evil morbidity of war. She saw for herself the wonderful and terrible stairs of sand which women had been climbing all the ages, and must climb on to the heights of solid rock, of equality, of salvation for the human race. She saw woman, the primitive, the female of the species, but she saw her also as the mother of the species, made to save as well as perpetuate, learning from the agony of childbirth and child care the meaning of him who said, "Thou shalt not kill." Tremendous would be the final resistance of woman to the brutality of man. Women were to be the saviors of humanity. It seemed so simple and natural that it could not be otherwise. Lenore realized, with a singular conception of the splendor of its truth, that when most women had found themselves their mission in life as she had found hers, then would come an end to violence, to greed, to hate, to war, to the black and hideous imperfection of mankind. With all her intellect and passion, Lenore opposed the theory of the scientists and biologists. If they proved that strife and fight were necessary to the development of man, that without violence and bloodshed and endless contention the race would deteriorate, then she would say that it would be better to deteriorate and to die. Women all would declare that, against that, and in fact would never believe. She would never believe with her heart, but if her intellect was forced to recognize certain theories, then she must find a way to reconcile life to the inscrutable designs of nature. The theory that continual strife was the very life of plants, birds, beasts, and men seemed verified by every reaction of the present. But if these things were fixed, materialistic rules of the existence of animated forms upon the earth, what then was God? What was the driving force in Kurt Dorn that made war duty some kind of murder which overthrew his mind? What was the love in her heart of all living things, and the nameless sublime faith in her soul? If we poor creatures must fight, said Lenore, and she meant this for a prayer, let the women fight eternally against violence, and let the men forever fight their destructive instincts. From that hour, the condition of Kurt Dorn changed for the better. Dr. Lowell admitted that Lenore had been the one medicine which might defeat the death that all except she had believed inevitable. Lenore was permitted to see him a few minutes every day, for which fleeting interval she must endure the endless hours. But she discovered that only when he was rational and free from pain would they let her go in. What Dorn's condition was all the rest of the time she could not guess, but she began to get inklings that it was very bad. Dad, I'm going to insist on staying with Kurt as long as I want, asserted Lenore, when she had made up her mind. This worried Anderson, and he appeared at a loss for words. I told Kurt I'd marry him the very day he could sit up, continued Lenore. By George, that accounts, exclaimed her father. He's been trying to sit up, and we've had hell with him. Dad, he will get well, and all the sooner if I can be with him more. He loves me. I feel I'm the only thing that counteracts the madness in his mind and the death in his soul. Anderson made one of his violent gestures. I believe you. That hits me with a bang. It takes a woman. Lenore, what's your idea? I want to marry him, murmured Lenore, to nurse him, to take him home to his wheat fields. You shall have it your way, replied Anderson, beginning to pace the floor. It can't do any harm. It might save him. And anyway, you'll be his wife, if only for... By George, we'll do it. You never gave me a wrong hunch in your life. But girl, it'll be hard for you to see him when he has the spells. Spells? Echoed Lenore. Yes. You've been told that he raves, but you don't know how. Why, it gets even my nerve. It fascinated me, but once was enough. I couldn't stand to see his face when his Huns came back to him. His Huns? Ejaculated Lenore, shuddering. What do you mean? Those Huns he killed, they come back to him. He fights them. You see him go through strange motions, and it's as if his left arm wasn't gone. He uses his right arm, and the motions he makes are the ones he made when he killed the Huns with his bayonet. It's terrible to watch him. The look on his face. I heard at the hospital in New York that in France they photographed him when he had one of the spells. I'd hate to have you see him then. But maybe after Dr. Lowell explains it, you'll understand. Poor boy. How terrible for him to live it all over. But when he gets well, when he has his wheat hills and me to fill his mind, those spells will fade. Yeah, maybe. I hope so. Lord knows it's all beyond me. But you're going to have your way. Dr. Lowell explained to Lenore that Dorn, like all mentally deranged soldiers, dreamed when he was asleep, and raved when he was out of his mind of only one thing, the foe. In his nightmares, Dorn had to be held forcibly. The doctor said that the remarkable and hopeful indication about Dorn's condition was a gradual daily gain in strength and a decline in the duration and violence of his bad spells. This assurance made Lenore happy. She began to relieve the worn-out nurse during the day, and she prepared herself for the first ordeal of actual experience of Dorn's peculiar madness. But Dorn watched her many hours, and would not or could not sleep while she was there. And the 10th day of his stay in many waters passed without her seeing what she dreaded. Meanwhile, he grew perceptibly better. The afternoon came when Anderson brought a minister. Then a few moments sufficed to make Lenore Dorn's wife. Chapter 31. The remarkable happened. Scarcely had the minister left when Kurt Dorn's smiling wonder and happiness sustained a break, as sharp and cold and terrible as if nature had transformed him from man to beast. His face became like that of a gorilla. Struggling up, he swept his right arm over and outward with a singular twisting energy, a bayonet thrust, and for him his left arm was still intact. A savage, unintelligible battle cry, yet unmistakably German, escaped from his lips. Lenore stood one instant petrified. Her father, grinding his teeth, attempted to lead her away. But as Dorn was about to pitch off the bed, Lenore, with piercing cry, ran to catch him and force him back. There she held him, subdued his struggles, and kept calling with that intensity of power and spirit which must have penetrated even his delirium. Whatever influence she exerted had quieted him, changed his savage face, until he relaxed and lay back passive and pale. It was possible to tell exactly when his reason returned, for it showed in the gaze he fixed upon Lenore. I had one of my fits, he said huskily. Oh, I don't know what it was, replied Lenore with quavering voice. Her strength began to leave her now. Her arms that had held him so firmly began to slip away. Son, you had a bad spell, interposed Anderson with his heavy breathing. First one she's seen. Lenore, I laid out my Huns again, said Dorn with a tragic smile. Lately I could tell when they were coming back. Did you know just now? Queried Lenore. I think so. I wasn't really out of my head. I've known when I did that. It's a strange feeling, thought, memory, and action drives it away. Then I seem always to want to kill my Huns all over again. Lenore gazed at him with mournful and passionate tenderness. Do you remember that we were just married? She asked. My wife, he whispered. Husband, I knew you were coming home to me. I knew you would not die. I know you will get well. I begin to feel that too. Then maybe the black spells will go away. They must, or you'll lose me, faltered Lenore. If you go on killing your Huns over and over, it'll be I who will die. She carried with her to her room a haunting sense of Dorn's reception of her last speech. Some tremendous impression it made on him. But whether of fear, of domination, or resolve, or all combined, she could not tell. She had weakened in mention of the return to his phantoms. But neither Dorn nor her father ever guessed that once in her room she collapsed from sheer feminine horror at the prospect of seeing Dorn change from man to a gorilla, and to repeat the savage orgy of re-murdering his Huns. That was too much for Lenore. She, who had been invincible in faith, who could stand any tests of endurance and pain, was not proof against a spectacle of Dorn's strange counterfeit presentiment of the actual and terrible killing he had performed with a bayonet. For days after that, she was under a strain which she realized would break her if it was not relieved. It appeared to be solely her fear of Dorn's derangement. She was with him almost all the daylight hours, attending him, watching him sleep, talking a little to him now and then, seeing with joy his gradual improvement, feeling each day the slow lifting of the shadow over him, and yet every minute of every hour she waited in dread for the return of Dorn's madness. It did not come. If it recurred at night, she never was told. Then after a week, a more pronounced change for the better in Dorn's condition marked a lessening of the strain upon Lenore. A little later it was deemed safe to dismiss the nurse. Lenore dreaded the first night vigil. She lay upon a couch in Dorn's room and never closed her eyes, but he slept, and his slumber appeared sound at times, and then restless, given over to dreams. He talked incoherently and moaned, and once appeared to be drifting into a nightmare when Lenore awaked him. Next day he sat up and said he was hungry. Thereafter Lenore began to lose her dread. "Well, son, let's talk wheat," said Anderson cheerily, one beautiful June morning as he entered Dorn's room. "Wheat," sighed Dorn with a pathetic glance at his empty sleeve. "How can I even do a man's work again in the fields?" Lenore smiled bravely at him. "You will sow more wheat than ever, and harvest more too." "I should smile," corroborated Anderson. "But how? I've only one arm," said Dorn. "Kurt, you hug me better with that one arm than you ever did with two arms," replied Lenore in sublime assurance. "Son, you lose that argument," roared Anderson. "Me and Lenore stand pat. You'll sow more and better wheat than ever, than any other man in the Northwest. Get my hunch? Well, I'll tell you later. Now see here, let me declare myself about you. I seen it worries you more and more now that you're getting well. You miss that good arm, and you feel the pain of bullets that still lodge somewheres in you, and you think you'll be crippled always. Now you look things in the face square. Sure, compared to what you once was, you'll be a cripple, but Kurt Dorn, weighing 190, let loose on a bunch of Huns, was some man. My Lord, forget that, and forget that you'll never chop a cord of wood again in a day. Look at facts like me and Lenore. We gave you up. And here you're with us, coming along fine, and you'll be able to do hard work someday, if you're crazy about it. Just think how good that is for Lenore, and me too. Now listen to this." Anderson unfolded a newspaper and began to read. "Continued improvement with favorable weather conditions in the winter wheat states and encouraging messages from the Northwest warrant an increase of crop estimates made 2 weeks ago and based mainly upon the government's report. In all probability, the yield from winter wheat fields will slightly exceed 600 million bushels. Increase of acreage in the spring states is unexpectedly large. For example, Minnesota's food administrator says the addition in his state is 40% instead of the early estimate of 20%. Throughout the spring area, the plants have had a good start and are in excellent condition. It may be that the yield will rise to 300 million bushels, making a total of about 900 million. From such a crop, 280 million can be exported in normal times, and by conservation, the surplus can easily be enlarged to 350 million, or even 400 million. In Canada also, estimates of acreage increase have been too low. It was said that the addition in Alberta was 20%, but recent reports make it 40%. Canada may harvest a crop of 300 million bushels or nearly 70 million more than last year's. Our allies in Europe can safely rely upon the shipment of 500 million bushels from the United States and Canada. After the coming harvest, there will be an ample supply of wheat for the flows of Germany at ports, which can easily be reached. In addition, the large surplus stocks in Australia and Argentina will be available when ships can be spared for such service. And the ships are coming from the builders. For more than a year to come, there will be wheat enough for our war partners, the Belgians, and the Northern European neutral countries with which we have trade agreements. Lenore eagerly watched her husband's face in pleasurable anticipation, yet with some anxiety. Wheat had been a subject little touched upon, and the war had never been mentioned. Great, he exclaimed, with a glow in his cheeks. I've been wanting to ask. Wheat for the Allies and neutrals for more than a year. Anderson, the United States will feed and save the world. I reckon. Son, we're sending thousands of soldiers a day now. Ships are building fast, aeroplanes coming like a swarm of bees, money for the government to burn, and every American getting mad. Dorn, the Germans don't know they're ruined. What do you say? Dorn looked very strange. Lenore, help me stand up, he asked, with a strong tremor in his voice. Oh, Kurt, you're not able yet. Help me. I want you to do it. Lenore complied, wondering and frightened, yet fascinated too. She helped him off the bed and steadied him on his feet. Then she felt him release himself, so he stood free. What do I say? Anderson, I say this. I killed Germans who had grown up with a training and a passion for war. I've been a farmer. I did not want to fight. Duty and hate forced me. The Germans I met fell before me. I was shell-shot, shocked, gassed, and bayoneted. I took 25 wounds, and then it was a shell that downed me. I saw my comrades killed and killed before they fell. That is American. Our enemies are driven, blinded, stolid, brutal, obsessed, and desperate. They are German. They lack not strength, nor efficiency, nor courage, but soul. White and spent, Dorn then leaned upon Lenore and got back upon his bed. His passion had thrilled her. Anderson responded with an excitement he plainly endeavored to conceal. I get your hunch, he said. If I needed any assurance, you've given it to me. To hell with the Germans. Let's don't talk about them anymore. And to come back to our job, wheat. Son, I've plans that I'll raise your hair. We'll harvest a bumper crop at Many Waters in July, and we'll sow 2,000 acres of winter wheat. So much for Many Waters. I got mad this summer. I blowed myself. I bought about all the farms around yours up in the Bend country. Big harvest of wheat, of spring wheat coming. You'll superintend that harvest, and I'll look after ours here. And you'll sow 10,000 acres of fallow on your own rich hills this fall. Did you get that? 10,000 acres. Anderson, gasped Dorn. Yes, Anderson, mimicked the rancher. My blood's up. But I'd never have felt so good about it if you hadn't come back. The land's not all paid for, but it's ours. We'll meet our notes. We've been up there twice this spring. You'd never know a few hills that burned over last harvest. Olson and your other neighbors, or most of them, will work the land on half shares. You'll be boss. And sure, you'll be well for fall sowing. That'll make you the biggest sower of wheat in the Northwest. My sower of wheat, murmured Lenore, seeing his rapt face through tears. Dreams are coming true, he said softly. Lenore, just after I saw you the second time and fell so in love with you, I had vain dreams of you. But even in my wildest never pictured you as the wife of a wheat farmer. I never dreamed you loved wheat. Oh, but I do, replied Lenore. Why, when I was born, Daddy bought Many Waters and sowed the slopes in wheat. I remember how he used to take me up to the fields, all green or golden. I've grown up with wheat. I never want to live anywhere away from it. Oh, you must listen to me someday while I tell you what I know about the history and romance of wheat. Begin, said Dorn, with a light of pride and love and wonder in his gaze. Leave that for some other time, interposed Anderson. Son, would it surprise you if I tell you that I've switched a little my ideas about the IWW? No, replied Dorn. Well, things change, things happen. What made me think hard was a way that the government man got results from the IWW in the lumber country. You see, the government had to have an immediate amount of timber for ships and spruce and aeroplanes. Had to have it quick. And all the lumbermen and loggers were IWW, or most of them. Anyhow, all the striking lumbermen last summer belonged to the IWW. These fellows believed that under the capitalistic order of labor, the workers and their employers had nothing in common, and the government was hand in glove with capital. Now this government official went up there and convinced the IWW that the best interests of the two were identical. And he got the work out of them, and the government got the lumber. He dealt with them fairly. Those who were on the level he paid high and considered their wants. Those who were crooked he punished according to their offense, and the innocent didn't have to suffer with the guilty. That deal showed me how many of the IWW could be handled, and we gotta reckon with the IWW. Most all the farm hands in the country belong to it. This summer I'll give the square harvesters what they want, and that's a big come down for me. But I won't stand any monkey business from sore-headed disorganizers. If men want to work, they shall have to work at big pay. You will follow out this plan up in the Bend country. We'll meet this labor union halfway. After the war, there may come trouble between labor and capital. It begins to seem plain to me that men who work hard ought to share something of the profits. If that doesn't settle the trouble, then we'll know we're up against an outfit with socialist and anarchist leaders. Time enough then to resort to measures I regret we practiced last summer. Anderson, you're fine. You're as big as the hills, burst out Dorn. But you know there was bad blood here last summer. Did you ever get proof that German money backed the IWW to strike and embarrass our government? No, but I believe so, or else the IWW leaders took advantage of a critical time. I'm bound to say that now thousands of IWW workers are loyal to the United States, and that made me switch. I'll deal with them the same way, responded Dorn with fervor. Then Lenore interrupted their discussion and pleading that Dorn was quite worn out from excitement and exertion, she got her father to leave the room. The following several days Lenore devoted to the happy and busy task of packing what she wanted to take to Dorn's home. She had set the date, but had reserved the pleasure of telling him. Anderson had agreed to her plan and decided to accompany them. I'll take the girls, he said. It'll be a fine ride for them. We'll stay in the village overnight and come back home the next day. Lenore, it strikes me suddenly like you're leaving. What will become of me? All at once he showed the ravages of pain and loss that the last year had added to his life of struggle. Lenore embraced him and felt her heart full. Dad, I'm not leaving you, she protested. Well, he'll get well up there. Find his balance sooner among those desert wheat hills. We will divide our time between the two places. Remember, you can run up there any day. Your interests are up there now. Dad, don't think of it as a separation. Kurt is coming to our family, and we're just going to be away some of the time. Thus she won back a smile to the worn face. We've all got a weak spot, he said musingly. Mine is here, and it's a fear of growing old and being left alone. That's selfish, but I've lived, and I reckon I've no more to ask for. Lenore could not help being sad in the midst of her increasing happiness. Joy to some brought to others only gloom. Life was sunshine and storm, youth and age. This morning she found Kathleen entertaining Dorn. This was the second time the child had been permitted to see him, and the immense novelty had not yet worn off. Kathleen was a hero worshipper. If she had been devoted to Dorn before his absence, she now manifested symptoms of complete idolatry. Lenore had forbidden her to question Dorn about anything in regard to the war. Kathleen never broke her promises, but it was plain that Dorn had read the mute, anguished wonder and flame in her eyes when they rested upon his empty sleeve, and evidently had told her things. Kathleen was white, wide-eyed, and beautiful then, but with all a child's imagination stirred. "I've been telling Kathy how I lost my arm," explained Dorn. "I hate Germans! I hate war!" cried Kathleen passionately. "My dear, hate them always," said Dorn. When Kathleen had gone, Lenore asked Dorn if he thought it was right to tell the child always to hate Germans. "Right," exclaimed Dorn with a queer laugh. Every day now he showed signs of stronger personality. "Lenore, what I went through has confused my sense of right and wrong. Some day perhaps it will all come clear. But Lenore, all my life, if I live to be 90, I shall hate Germans." "Oh, Kurt, it's too soon for you to be less narrow, less passionate," replied Lenore with hesitation. I understand. The day will come when you'll not condemn a people because of a form of government, of military class." "It will never come," asserted Dorn positively. "Lenore, people in our country do not understand. They are too far away from realities. But I was 6 months in France. I've seen the ruined villages, thousands of refugees, and have met Huns at the front. I know. I've seen the realities. In regard to this war, I can only feel. You've got to go over there and see for yourself before you realize. You can understand this. That but for you and your power over me, I'd be a worn-out, emotionally burnt-out man. But through you, I seem to be reborn. Still, I shall hate Germans all my life, and in the afterlife, whatever that may be. I could give you 1,000 reasons. One ought to suffice. You've read, of course, about the regiment of Frenchmen called Blue Devils. I met some of them, got friendly with them. They are great, beyond words to tell.